In this video, you'll see how to preview your composition. Many of the controls for previewing composition are in the Preview panel. Let's begin by using a common method of previewing that doesn't use these controls. If you drag the current time indicator back and forth, you can preview whatever frames you like in the timeline panel. This is often referred to as scrubbing. Notice, if I put the current time indicator at a time that doesn't have one of these green bars, it takes a moment before After Effects updates and renders the frame there, and once it's rendered the frame there, we get a new little green bar. After Effects has to render the frame based on the information in the composition, and depending on how computationally intensive the composition is, this can take some time. And once it's done that, it takes that frame and it caches it into RAM. These green bars indicate frames that are cached into RAM. So that now when we go back to one of these areas with green bars, instead of re-rendering the frame, After Effects pulls the frame out of memory so that it can play it back immediately. One way that people try to preview is to press the spacebar. I'll do that now. Notice we have a red warning here that tells us that playback is not happening at real time. In fact, it's happening at about 4 frames per second instead of the 24 frames per second that we would prefer. This is because what After Effects is doing when we hit the spacebar is it's rendering a frame, playing it to the screen, then rendering the next frame, then playing it to the screen, then rendering the next frame and playing it to the screen, which it can't always do in real time. So, what is the better way to preview? The better way to preview, instead of hitting the spacebar, is to use RAM Preview. If we go to our Preview panel, we can see that this button here is called RAM Preview. I actually prefer to use the keyboard shortcut for RAM Preview, which is 0 on the numeric keypad. If you're using a computer that does not have a numeric keypad, such as a MacBook Pro, then you can use Control plus 0 on the main keyboard, not the numeric keypad. This only works on Mac OS. Other users can use the numeric keypad and just use the 0 on the numeric keypad. I'll press 0 now. And notice, playing from RAM, 235 of 235, FPS 23.976, real time. The way that RAM Preview works is that After Effects renders all of the frames and waits until it has all of them cached into RAM before it begins playback. So it's playing back from RAM instead of rendering a frame, playing it back, rendering a frame, playing it back, and so on, as with spacebar. I'll stop the RAM Preview by clicking the button. Notice that this play button here in the Preview panel does the same thing as the spacebar. I almost never use this. I tend to use RAM Preview. Also in the Preview panel, we have the first frame button. The shortcut for this is the Home key. Takes us to the first frame. We have Previous Frame, Play and Pause, which, as I said, we don't tend to use. Next Frame. Now notice that Next Frame and Previous Frame also have keyboard shortcuts, Page Up and Page Down. So if I press Page Up and Page Up, I go backward a frame at a time. Then I'll press Page Down, Page Down, Page Down, Page Down. And each time I press it, I'm moving ahead 1 frame. Last frame, which is End. And then I can either mute audio with RAM Preview or cause RAM Preview to loop. Right now, my looping is set to loop normally, but I can make it ping pong, which means that when it gets to the end, it plays backward. Here, it just plays once, and here is regular looping again. We actually have 2 types of RAM Preview and Shift RAM Preview. If you hold Shift while initiating RAM Preview, you use a different set of options. I'll change the options for Shift RAM Preview. So I skip 5 frames, and so the frame rate is very low, and the resolution is 1/4. So if I hold Shift as I initiate RAM Preview, this RAM Preview renders relatively quickly. It's skipping a lot of frames, and it's rendering at a lower resolution. This is useful for when you don't need to see the perfect image or the perfect smooth frame rate, but instead you're just checking a smattering of frames, looking for, say, color or overall timing. And as soon as this RAM preview is finished building, it'll begin playing on its own. And there is our Shift RAM preview. I'll stop this. If you choose from current time, then RAM preview will play from where the current time indicator is instead of beginning at the beginning. Notice if I choose this now and click RAM preview, it starts here at the end, but because I have it set to loop, jumps immediately to the front. So those are the basic options for previewing. The thing to keep in mind is that if you want to preview with audio, you use RAM preview, and if you want to preview in real time, you use RAM preview. You don't tend to use the spacebar because the spacebar play does not play audio and will not play back in real time in many cases.